This just in, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has just announced he will resign as leader of the ruling Liberal Party. Let's watch.
My friends, as you all know, I'm a fighter. Every bone in my body has always told me to fight because I care deeply about Canadians. I care deeply about this country, and I will always be motivated by what is in the best interest of Canadians. And the fact is, despite best efforts to work through it, Parliament has been paralysed for months after what has been the longest session of a minority parliament in Canadian history. That's why this morning I advised the Governor-General that we need a new session of Parliament.
Trudeau had been leader of the Liberal Party for 11 years and Prime Minister for 9. He had been facing a mounting set of crises, including the resignation of key allies, disastrous opinion polls, and Donald Trump's tariff threats.
President-elect Donald Trump has said he will sign an executive order imposing a 25% tariff on all products coming into the U.S. from Canada. Trump had also taken to belittling Trudeau and the country of Canada, joking that it may become the 51st state. This despite a visit in November by the beleaguered PM to Mar-a-Lago to try to offset potential damage to his nation and his position. After that visit, Trump had tweeted, "It was a pleasure to have dinner the other night with Governor Justin Trudeau of the great state of Canada. I look forward to seeing the governor again soon so that we may continue our in-depth talks on tariffs and trade, the results of which will be truly spectacular for all. Love, DJT." So that is the end of Justin Trudeau. It is a remarkably long tenure, and we were discussing this privately off screen. Parliamentary systems, this is how it generally ends for the leader. There is an eventual revolution of the people not wanting that person or that party to remain in control, and they lose favor. Even this happens to even very popular figures in parliamentary systems like Churchill and Thatcher eventually. And so now there will be, I understand, an internal election of the Liberal Party, and then that person will become Prime Minister and will face an election in the future, just as Trudeau would have faced.
Yeah, exactly. No, the Liberal Party in Canada is struggling badly, as we somewhat alluded to in the introduction. The Conservative Party there has a lead of around about 20 percentage points in the opinion polls. But yes, Justin Trudeau is announcing that he's going to obviously remain while this process plays out. And interestingly, and I didn't know this about Canadian politics or with the Liberal Party, they can either choose to have a leadership election that is open to the grassroots or do it more through the parliamentary party, and he appears to be opting for the bigger, broader grassroots effort, which will take several weeks, but then the leader of the Liberal Party will become Canada's Prime Minister. You're quite right to point out, this is what happens in parliamentary systems, and Trudeau has been in power for a long time, as we said, 9 years, 2015. He has performed, or his party has performed worse in each subsequent election to that. His approval rating in recent months was down to sometimes around 20%. So it was a pretty bleak outlook for Justin Trudeau, and under pressure he has decided that that's enough of that, and he will soon be a former Prime Minister.
He's never been a particularly popular figure with American conservatives for a variety of reasons. He's a very progressive individual. I think he particularly invited the ire of American conservatives and independents over his handling of COVID, in particular COVID dissent, the trucker protests, and how he responded to that was seen by, I know many guests we've had on this show and previous hosts of this show and people watching this show. His actions were seen as deeply illiberal, counter to free speech, counter to the debanking that occurred. All of that made him, yes, a very not well-liked person among those of us who wanted less strict enforcement of COVID mandates. And then beyond that, he is sort of a tacit moral supporter of wokeness and those kinds of things. I know many conservatives have had issues as well with what they would describe as the overreaches of his governance when it comes to DEI and things of that nature, accommodations and mandates in schools and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's also just simply the simple ideological difference. He is a liberal person, and therefore he tends to draw the ire of Conservatives. Obviously, COVID was a massively divisive issue, but you look at what Trudeau has advocated for or enacted, and he has wanted higher taxes on the very rich. He's very pro-abortion rights. He has set new targets for combating climate change. All of those things Liberals like and Conservatives dislike, and that is part of the reason why he has become, such a kind of divisive figure, I suppose, in American politics as well as Canadian politics. I mean, I remember when he first came on the scene, it was the idea of him as this Canadian Obama, in a sense, partly because of his youth and his good looks. And so there was this glamour that accrued to him from liberal circles and a sort of reflexive opposition to him in conservative circles. It's been a long stretch. Voters eventually tire of almost all politicians if you hang around long enough, and I think that is what has happened to him to some degree.
Yes, and there is a global backlash against incumbents of any ideological stripe. Although you could say it's hurting people on the center left a little bit more, I think, but certainly the frustrations in this country over inflation and immigration are being felt all over the globe. Yeah,
absolutely, and I think the immigration part of that picture is particularly salient. Immigration is a topic that parties of the centre-left throughout the West have really struggled with a lot because they are generally at pains to not take any position that can be seen as racist or xenophobic, but there is also a lot of pressure, public pressure, popular pressure to curb immigration to some degree. And of course, as we were mentioning off camera, it is often lower income groups who are either most susceptible to employment pressures or are more dependent on government resources, which then can seem to at least be in a state of scarcity if there is more demand for them.
Sure. Immigration overall, economists will argue, benefits GDP, benefits firms that want to hire employees, both at the high-skilled level and also actually at the low-skill level. Now, critics of open immigration policies will say this is benefiting, yes, the elite, the business class. Does it benefit the common people, the people who are competing against the immigrants coming in, and then also, as you point out, competing for the finite amount of social services and resources, the hospital system, the education system, the housing, all those kinds of things. It is keenly felt the difficulty of, and then the arguments about letting in violent people or having cultural assimilation taking place is also something that has resonated with a lot of voters.
Absolutely, and it has also, I think, been a driver of, at least in American politics and British politics, I can speak with less authority about Canada, a degree of a realignment with a certain, at least, swathe of working class voters who would traditionally have backed more centre-left or left-wing parties because of the identification with the cause of labour, have been sort of pulled away from that on the immigration issue to more populist positions.
Yes. We'll be back with more Rising right after this.